Anybody see in the fourth quarter, Asia Wilson's trying out for an offensive lineman position in the NFL? And then look at, if you don't want to be pissed off, don't watch this. In overtime, a moving screen with 2 minutes left, and this is the biggest shot of the game after fouling out Boston for less.
Let's ask the question that is now hanging over the entire WNBA. Did the Las Vegas Aces truly beat the Indiana Fever, or did the referees simply hand them the series? Because when the league's MVP, Aliyah Wilson, is awarded a staggering 26 free throws over the course of the entire series, while her direct opponent, Aliyah Boston, widely considered the league's premier post defender and a player who relentlessly attacks the paint on offense, is given a grand total of 0 free throws in the first 2 games and only 17 for the entire series, you are forced to ask the uncomfortable question: was this a legitimate competition, or was it a carefully orchestrated manipulation?
Only Asia Wilson could get away with this. Look at this. And ESPN called this a highlight. You could clearly see both feet come off the ground and land again. That's illegal. And let's check this out. A double dribble. She spins, touches it with 2 hands. Like, this is first grade stuff. The refs, of course, they miss it because it's Asia Wilson. She's dribbling, touches it with 2 hands on the spin move, gathers it, and passes to a teammate. And watch this at travel. That's her pivot foot. Like, this is some Angel Reese type stuff. Like, 3 in 1 game? That's horrible.
In this video, we are pulling back the curtain and exposing Aliyah Wilson's entire stat sheet. The free throws, the fouls, the missed calls, and the symphony of bizarre whistles that hijacked a legendary, defiant stand by the Indiana Fever and transformed it into a firestorm of officiating controversy. You are about to see exactly why the fans are calling this series stolen rather than won. And you are going to want to stick around, because what Aliyah Boston really said about what many are now calling a rigged series will absolutely shock you. So we have to ask you, let us know down in the comments what you really think of a Jazz special whistle.
I think it was a physical game, you know. I think there's a double standard in how people get their calls. I think Aliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the league. She never gets a call. And you know, there's a double standard there, certainly. But, you know, again, if it's going to be physical and you're going to allow us to be physical, then allow both teams to be physical. If you're going to call the holds and you're going to call the chucks, and you're going to then call it both ways. So, I mean, I think that we've been pretty consistent in what we're asking for. And I didn't feel like it was consistent.
How is it possible that one star player gets to operate under a completely different rulebook than everyone else on the floor? That is the single maddening question that has hung over this entire semifinal series like a dark cloud. Because when you meticulously go through the game-by-game numbers between Aliyah Wilson and Aliyah Boston, the emerging pattern stops looking like a series of random chances and starts to look suspiciously and intentionally designed. Over the course of 5 hard-fought games, Aliyah Wilson was allowed to march to the free throw line a staggering 26 times. Aliyah Boston, despite banging in the post and drawing a tremendous amount of contact every single night, only managed to get there 17 times in total. And almost all of those attempts came in a single game, Game 4, when the desperate Las Vegas Aces were deliberately hacking anyone who touched the ball in the final minutes just to extend the clock. Those late-game, intentional freebies ultimately padded her final count, but without them, the cavernous gap between the 2 stars' free throw attempts would be an absolute embarrassment for the league to try and explain.
And look at these moving screens. She totally destroys Lexi Hall, and guess what? They get a 3-point bucket off that play. They didn't call that an offense foul. Look at this one. Do you see how she sticks her leg out? They wonder why they get wide open layups and 3-pointers. Look at the room it makes when you set an illegal screen. That's why it's illegal. Another one, look at this. She moves over, and it's just enough time for her teammate to get a 3-pointer off. Watch how she does this. She thrusts her hips at the end. Look at it. Thrust her hips to get that extra space, and she gets an open layup. Like I said, 4 offensive fouls they didn't call, and they got 10 points. And this is
Now just go back and rewatch games 1 and 2. The Indiana Fever's entire offensive centerpiece, Aliyah Boston, a player whose entire dominant playstyle is built on physical post-ups and finishing through contact, did not shoot a single free throw, not one. If you watch those games, you will see A'ja Wilson consistently absorbing whistles for the absolute softest of touch fouls, while on the other end of the floor, Aliyah Boston was being shoved, hit on the arms, and knocked down without so much as a passing glance from the referees. That profound disparity cannot just be chalked up to different styles of play. The ball flowed through Boston constantly on offense. For her whistle to go completely and utterly silent for 2 consecutive high-stakes playoff games, that sounds a lot more like selective enforcement, and the total foul counts from the series only serve to further build this damning case. Over the course of the 5 games, Aliyah Boston was hit with a total of 19 fouls. A'ja Wilson, just 14. That discrepancy is already strange enough on its own, but it becomes even more baffling when you remember who each player was assigned to guard. Aliyah Boston defended A'ja Wilson possession after grueling possession, while Wilson was often on switches, frequently hiding on the Fever's wings in an effort to conserve her energy. And yet, the final foul count says that Aliyah Boston fouled 5 more times. How is that even possible? On the game tape, you can literally count A'ja Wilson's repeated moving screens over and over again, blatantly illegal footwork that was designed to free up shooters like Jackie Young or Chelsea Gray, and it was almost never called.
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
And this is just based on a single cursory review of the game tape. By one unofficial count, there were at least 37 uncalled moving screens committed by A'ja Wilson alone across the entire series. 37. That averages out to nearly 8 illegal screens per game, all of them just completely wiped away as if they had never even happened. And yet somehow Aliyah Boston sets one single solid legal screen and it is immediately whistled for a foul. A'ja Wilson, on the other hand, can lean half of her body into defenders on pick after pick and she gets absolutely nothing. This is how it starts to form a completely one-way street. Fouls begin to pile up on Boston. While the whistles consistently bail out Wilson, Boston is forced to play defense with her hands straight up. She takes bumps on the inside, and the foul is still called against her. Wilson, meanwhile, can hook arms on rebounds or lower her shoulder on entry plays, and the refs just act completely blind. At what point do you stop asking whether this is just a string of tough luck and start asking whether the officials are actively protecting a predetermined narrative? Is the league's chosen face getting a free pass that other less favored players do not receive? Because based on the evidence from this series, A'ja Wilson's special whistle is no longer just some fringe conspiracy theory. It is a theory that is now being backed up by the cold hard math.
So we got a 4-point game in the middle of the third, and this is an offensive foul, right? That's what the refs say. This is how fair the WNBA is, but this is not a moving screen. That was way worse. And not only that, it led to 3 points and called this a foul on the Fever. This is the worst moving screen I've ever seen. And this in the fourth quarter in a 4-point game. Oh, it gets worse. In overtime, a moving screen right in front of everybody. And then guess what it leads to? A 3-pointer in a 2-point game with 2 minutes left. Another moving screen. Instead of calling this a moving screen on A'ja Wilson, they call a foul on the Fever. I can't make this crap up. Look at this. Instead of calling a foul on Lloyd, it's a foul on the Fever. Then Alyssa Smith definitely did a moving screen on Lexi Hall, which led to 2 points. Las Vegas Aces motto, where our moving screens become your personal fouls.
Look, when you stack all of the evidence together, a grim picture emerges. 0 free throws for Aliyah Boston in the crucial first 2 games of the series. Just 17 total attempts for her compared to A'ja Wilson's 26. 19 fouls called on Boston versus a mere 14 on Wilson, despite her constant and blatant illegal screens. A staggering 37 times the league's MVP got away with violations that absolutely could have shifted possessions and changed the entire complexion of the games. Every single layer of this evidence tilts in the exact same suspicious direction, consistently helping one side while actively burying the other. So, if the statistical imbalance already screams of blatant favoritism, what happens when you drill down into the actual pivotal moments that swung the deciding Game 5? That is where the favoritism went from being just a series of numbers on a stat sheet to actively and visibly deciding the outcome right in front of our very eyes. Game 5 should have been a heavyweight, legendary battle between two of the league's brightest stars, but instead it devolved into a frustrating 3-hour war between the Indiana Fever and the referees. When the stage was finally set for Aliyah Boston and A'ja Wilson to prove who could carry their team to the finals, the whistles made absolutely sure that Aliyah Boston never even got that chance. It was no longer about who played better, it was about who the officials allowed to stay on the floor.
This is considered a foul in the conference finals of the WNBA. Oh, you mean A'ja Wilson's on the opposing team? It's all starting to add up and make sense. You have to cheat to win basketball games.
The very first moment in that game, where everyone in the arena collectively shook their heads in disbelief, came in the third quarter. Aliyah Boston set what appeared to be a completely textbook screen at the top of the key. Her feet were firmly planted and her hands were tucked in at her sides. And then suddenly, the whistle blew. Offensive foul, moving screen, the ref declared. The television cameras immediately replayed the sequence, and even the on-air commentators were left to sit in a stunned, awkward silence. There was no discernible movement, there was no lean, just a perfectly legal basketball play that had just been completely and inexplicably erased by a phantom call. And that one single questionable foul completely changed how Aliyah Boston was forced to attack for the rest of the night, because in that moment, she knew her already thin margin for error had just been completely erased by the officials.
So there was a huge flop on Boston's third foul. Did you see Boston's fifth foul? And then to foul her out on a 50-50 ball with 27 seconds left is wild.
And then came Megan Gustafson's absolute masterpiece of a flop. Aliyah Boston cleanly caught the ball on the block. She began to turn into her post move, and suddenly, Gustafson went flying backward as if she had just taken a direct punch to the jaw. The slow motion replay, however, revealed that there was barely any contact whatsoever, and yet the whistle still favored Gustafson, and another completely bogus foul was added to Aliyah Boston's box score. Two completely bogus fouls, each one cutting deeper and deeper into her ability to play aggressive defense or to confidently back down A'ja Wilson on the inside.
But Aliyah did say I have a special whistle when she shot 13 today.
She's in that team.
Yeah. Yeah. She said the last game I had a special whistle, which is cool.
The final, back-breaking straw was a rebound battle against Jackie Young late in regulation. Aliyah Boston had established perfect textbook position. Her hands were straight up, and she was in the process of securing the board. Jackie Young then nudged into her. She stumbled, and yet somehow it was Aliyah Boston's whistle that blew yet again. And that was foul number 6. Just like that, with the entire game hanging in the balance, the Indiana Fever's defensive anchor was out. The scoreboard was tied. The arena should have been buzzing with the anticipation of an all-time classic finish. Instead, the Indiana Fever's defense completely collapsed without its centerpiece, and the Las Vegas Aces' advantage only grew. What made the entire situation even more infuriating was the stark contrast in how both stars had played the game. Aliyah Boston was out there contesting every single shot, she was defending without reaching, and she was expertly bodying up in the paint. A'ja Wilson, on the other end of the floor, was leaning almost exclusively on a steady diet of whistles and free throws to generate her offensive production, and the fans absolutely noticed. The outrage exploded online, with entire threads being filled with slowed down clips of fans circling the specific officiating moments that had completely gutted Indiana's chance to win. Even the national media was forced to call out the glaring imbalance, pointing to those 3 specific game-altering calls that had ultimately sealed Aliyah Boston's fate. For one of the league's very best defenders to foul out in this manner wasn't just unfortunate, it was completely and utterly decisive. And still, somehow, after all of that, the Las Vegas Aces managed to act like they were the victims.
So while you're looking at that box score, I'm wondering what's really standing out to you there.
I was just looking at the fouls. Like, Liz had 5, Jackie had 5, Chelsea had 5. And that's very interesting to me because I'm not saying we don't foul. Yeah, we foul here and there, but that's very interesting.
So what happens when the very same team that has been benefiting from every single questionable whistle suddenly decides to play the victim card? That is the exact surreal scenario we just witnessed in the aftermath of Game 4, when A'ja Wilson stood in front of the press and dropped the absolutely headline-making claim that the entire series was somehow being rigged. Just think about that for a second. Through the first 4 games of this series, A'ja Wilson had already taken a staggering 19 free throws compared to Aliyah Boston's 15. She was, by any objective measure, practically living at the free throw line. Aliyah Boston, meanwhile, was consistently taking hard physical contact down on the block with almost nothing to show for it. And yet, somehow, A'ja Wilson managed to spin this entire story so that it was the Las Vegas Aces who were the ones being unfairly targeted by the officials.
I gotta go back and look at the tape, but it seemed like there was a lot of grabbing and holding down there. That got called one way. Anything else? I did appreciate it was a little tighter called, but tighter on both ends would have been nice.
The sheer breathtaking irony of her complaint is almost insulting. A'ja Wilson's total foul count through those first 4 games sat at just 12. Aliyah Boston's, on the other hand, was at 14, and this is all while Aliyah Boston was tasked with the single toughest defensive assignment of the entire series, guarding the league's MVP, A'ja Wilson, one-on-one for nearly every single possession. A'ja Wilson, on the other hand, was regularly caught on camera, setting what appeared to be outright illegal, moving screens, and yet the referee's whistle remained conspicuously and consistently silent. Now just pretend for a single moment that those roles were reversed. If Aliyah Boston had put her hands on a guard during a screen, you know that a ref would have been pointing the other way in an instant. But with A'ja Wilson, it was just business as usual.
Megan had 4.
What? Oh my God, that's interesting. That's what I was looking at. But we'll do better. We gotta play better defense.
By interesting, do you mean that shit?
Yeah, I can't say that because I got a brand to protect. But
Say it, I have no brand.
yeah, it's interesting. But we'll be better.
And A'ja Wilson wasn't the only one on that team who was busy framing herself as a victim either. Becky Hammon herself drew a technical foul in Game 4 for screaming about the officiating, and this was not a one-off, isolated moment of frustration. The Las Vegas Aces have a well-documented track record of completely melting down whenever the playoff pressure truly begins to build. Instead of focusing on their own execution, they immediately begin to search for outside forces to blame. It has at this point become a core part of their identity, posture as if the entire league is conspiring against them, even while they are in the process of collecting wins that have been aided by a steady diet of freebies at the charity stripe. That is what made A'ja Wilson's victim card so clearly and transparently strategic. Those carefully chosen words came at a perfect time, right before a decisive and pivotal Game 5, and the subsequent whistles in that matchup tell the entire damning story. You had Aliyah Boston being disqualified with a series of completely bogus fouls, while A'ja Wilson continued to earn trips to the free throw line with minimal resistance. 13 free throws for Las Vegas in just 2 minutes at the end of overtime. Are we really supposed to believe that A'ja Wilson's pre-game comments about bias and rigging carried absolutely no weight after a result like that? The officials became hypersensitive to keeping Las Vegas comfortable, and the Indiana Fever paid the ultimate price. And while Las Vegas was busy working the refs with their words, the Indiana Fever answered in a completely different way by digging in and relentlessly battling through every single thing that was stacked against them. Even with a roster that had been cut down to the bone by injuries, the Indiana Fever still managed to force the 2-time defending champions to sweat out every single possession. They were missing critical depth at nearly every single spot on the floor, but they somehow just kept on pushing the mighty Las Vegas Aces deep into overtime minutes. That fight did not come from luck, and it certainly did not come from friendly whistles. It came from a group of players who simply refused to quit, even when the game and the officials kept on stacking the deck against them. So how will you ultimately remember this group and this incredibly special run that they had all season?
Aliyah, how will you remember this group and this special run that you had all season?
Yeah, I mean, this has been my best year. Seriously, I think with the people that we had in the locker room, the amount of fun that I had on the court, off the court, in the locker room, we just talked about how special this group was and how we're always going to be connected. And honestly, that's how I feel like these women became my sisters so quickly, and it was honestly just some of the best basketball I've had.
Odyssey Sims is the very first name that people mention when they start talking about this incredible Defiant performance. Having been signed late in the season on a hardship contract, she was never supposed to be the one leading the Indiana Fever's offense on a high-stakes playoff stage. And yet, by the time Game 5 had concluded, she had poured in an incredible 27 points, single-handedly carrying the team through long stretches where the Indiana Fever looked completely and utterly out of gas. And it wasn't just the sheer volume of her scoring, it was the impeccable timing. She consistently hit crucial buckets in transition. She single-handedly stopped scoring droughts whenever the Las Vegas Aces went on their inevitable runs, and she maintained a firm control of the ball, even when the suffocating pressure from Las Vegas ramped up to its highest levels. Lexi Hull, meanwhile, added yet another legendary chapter to her growing reputation for sheer unadulterated toughness. Playing through a nagging and painful back injury that had visibly limited her mobility, she still managed to find her shooting stroke from beyond the arc, especially in those moments when the Indiana Fever's offense desperately needed a release valve. And that's not even mentioning her relentless hustle and her lockdown defense on the All-Star, Jackie Young, throughout the entire series.
I mean, I think that's something we can take away from this season. Obviously, ending on a loss is hard and not what you want, but I do think that we can be proud of the effort we put out there, especially in the fourth quarter, you know, losing Aliyah, losing Kelsey. I don't even know if that was the third or fourth quarter. But two of our biggest stars go down and we continue to fight and send it to overtime. So I think that's, you know, we're proud of ourselves. We're proud of that fight. And it's just sad to see this group be done.
Kelsey Mitchell's night served as a powerful, poignant reminder of both her undeniable brilliance and the sheer, almost cruel bad fortune that has surrounded this Indiana Fever team. Before debilitating cramps ultimately forced her to leave the game late, she had been the dynamic, unstoppable scorer that Las Vegas simply could not keep in front of them. She was consistently getting into the paint, she was pulling up from mid-range with a deadly accuracy, and she was knocking down her shots with a beautiful, fluid rhythm. When she was finally forced to exit the game, visibly struggling, the entire energy in the arena shifted. Everyone in that building knew that Kelsey Mitchell leaving the game left a massive, likely insurmountable hole for the Fever to fill. And what made her effort on that night even more powerful was the simple fact that she had gutted it out until her own body gave her absolutely no other choice. She desperately wanted to stay in the game, but the overwhelming exhaustion and the painful cramping simply did not give her that option.
Steph, I know what a competitor you are. How soon do you start thinking about, okay, let's start thinking about next year?
Tomorrow.
I knew it. You could have held hands with that. I knew it.
See, this is what happens when you're on the same wavelength. Good things happen.
knew it.
What's that mindset like you both have, and why are you already like, okay, that's happened, we're on to the next?
It's because you can't hold on to it. I mean, you just look at it, and obviously we're going to be watching the championship games, and that's going to be the feeling that we want to be in that next year. And that's going to be the mindset. Is already prepping. I told you, we're ready to go.
And we're competitors.
Exactly.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, this makes you hungry for more.
And then, of course, there was Aliyah Boston, a player who had been forced to live under the suffocating weight of foul pressure for this entire series. Even with the constant threat of phantom calls hanging over her head, she still managed to completely anchor the paint. She fought tenaciously on the glass, and she guarded the league's MVP, Aja Wilson, straight up. For every single trip to the free throw line that Aja Wilson earned on a questionable whistle, Aliyah Boston was out there grinding out thankless physical possessions that were rarely, if ever, rewarded by the officials. The fact that Game 5 ended with her being fouled out was not just unfair, it was cruel, but it also powerfully exposed the undeniable fact that the Indiana Fever had only managed to stay alive in that game because she had single-handedly kept them within striking distance for 4 incredibly strong and dominant quarters.
How are you assessing your growth year over year, and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like I'm super proud of myself. Just like you said, adjusting and adapting. And for me, like, a championship's always on my mind. I think no matter what happens, like, obviously you hate losing, but you kind of started with your question with just the progression that it's been. And so for me, obviously, that's my mindset. We got a taste of it, Game 5 semifinals, and now we want the real thing. And that's honestly going to be our mindset coming in for next year. And I'm super excited going into this offseason. Time to put a lot of work in. Just get ready to come back and win.
And together, this resilient patchwork group demonstrated something far bigger than mere statistics. The Indiana Fever didn't just fold, they took the defending champions to overtime on the road with half their roster missing, all while battling the crushing weight of one-sided officiating. They did not lose because they weren't good enough. They were cheated out of the opportunity they had so clearly earned. And when it all ended, it was Aliyah Boston who reminded everyone that this story is far from finished. She spoke not of excuses, but of her unwavering aspirations for a championship and the team's powerful rallying cry of "we over me." After a night like this, those words feel less like simple optimism and more like a direct, chilling promise. Let's be clear, the Indiana Fever did not lose this series because they were not good enough. They lost because the Las Vegas Aces needed outside help to survive. The whistles dictated the outcome, not the talent on the floor. And yet, despite all of that, the Indiana Fever left this series with something real and tangible. Aliyah Boston perfectly summed it up with the team's mantra, "we over me," making it clear her eyes are already fixed on a championship. The sideline Caitlin Clark echoed that same pride in what this incredible group had managed to accomplish. The future for this team is now loaded with promise, but if the WNBA ever wants to claim true legitimacy, it absolutely must explain why 26 free throws went one way and a series of phantom fouls were allowed to steal a season's dream. So let us know down in the comments what you think of Aj's special whistle. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.